The universal concept of a chocolate city is built upon a structure encompassing the village, the soul, and the power. We see this framework take root during the migration of Black Americans from the Deep South. The development of Chicago exemplifies how all aspects of a chocolate city are actualized. The settlement of Black people in the urban city of Chicago was the catalyst for an extensive period of unrest and racial violence. Chicago's growing Black population was met with an abundance of white hostility. White residents of Chicago were indignant at the fact that they now had to compete with Black citizens for jobs, housing, and other resources. As a result, the Black citizens of Chicago became targets for white supremacist aggression. Growing tensions came to a climax during the summer of 1919 when a 17-year-old Black boy by the name of Eugene Williams drowned due to this targeted racial violence. Black citizens were outraged when police officers refused to arrest the white men responsible for Williams' death. This event triggered a series of deadly race riots that plagued chocolate cities across the nation. This period of racial violence is remembered by history as the Red Summer. As Black citizens of Chicago faced the immense threat of white supremacy, they had to develop tactics that would allow them to continue existing as Black people in a city where their presence was extremely unwelcome. These methods of maneuvering in the face of racist hostility are what constitute the village concept of the Chocolate Cities framework. They emphasize the importance of placemaking in the most inhospitable and unequal circumstances.
As Black Americans brought the village with them wherever they went, the soul arose through the community's fight to exist in a new urban space. Soul was a new articulation of that moving spirit and spoke directly and unapologetically about the conditions of Black life, striving for freedom and a determination for rights and respect. It presented the pain of Black life, pointed out systemic and individual perpetrators, and made explicit moral, ethical, and social political claims on the state. Through soul music, the sacred and profane in Black life and resistance were forever intertwined. We see the rise of soul music in Chicago through the artist Aretha Franklin.
Though she was born in Detroit, she was crowned the Queen of Soul in Chicago. The assassination of figureheads like MLK, Malcolm X, and JFK left the infrastructure of the Black freedom movement dismantled. Black people turned to Aretha's music for a sense of hope and a direction to follow. Aretha's work sowed the seeds of faith, pleasure, and protest that made up the soul sound all over the chocolate map. Up south, out south, down south, and deep south, Aretha's voice connects and introduces chocolate cities to one another. Her sound became the soul anthem and gave visibility to chocolate maps. It was a language of power as it was being formed alongside civil rights, Black arts, and Black power movements.
The Power was the headquarters of political mobilization, and chocolate cities became empowered masses. In Chicago, we saw the Chicago Freedom Movement.
During World War II, opportunities to work in rapidly expanding industries such as railroad and steel and the Jim Crow laws brought African Americans to the North in large numbers, known as the Great Migration, leading to competition for jobs and housing. In the 1920s, racially restrictive covenants prevented many African Americans from moving into the city. At one point, 80% of the city was under covenants. While most of the attention was on the South, the situation of Blacks in northern cities were largely ignored.
In January 1966, MLK and the SCLC announced plans for the start of the Chicago Freedom Movement, a campaign marking the expansion of the civil rights movement from the South to the North. Albert Ravi, a Chicago native activist and educator, asked the SCLC to join them in a nonviolent campaign aimed at achieving fair housing practices.
These demonstrations culminated in the Summit Agreement, where the Chicago Housing Authority agreed to build more housing and mortgages would be provided regardless of race or location. This and the 1968 Fair Housing Act were directly resultant from the Chicago Freedom Movement, thus exemplifying the power of organized resistance for enacting political change.
Did you see us, brothers and sisters?